All right, we are back for another episode of Practical Youth Ministry Tips, and I am so excited. I've got my friends Kenny and Elle jumping on today. Hey, how are you guys doing?
Hello, doing so great. How are you, Kenny?
So,
It's a beautiful day
It
here in
is.
Charlotte, North Carolina. Loving it.
on the opposite side of the country from where I'm at, and
Hmm.
you come out here my way a little bit here and there, coming out here soon, and but you guys kind of get all over. But I want to just ask a couple questions for the our viewers today, our listeners, to get to know you a little bit if they don't know who you are. So I kind of found out about you guys when you were middle school pastors in Buffalo, which out of my
Hmm.
29, almost 30 years of youth ministry, I've been a middle school pastor, 12 of those. So tell us a little bit about you guys, your ministry journey, and kind of where you are and how you got to where you are at today.
Sure. Yeah, we started out, grew up, raised in Buffalo, New
Hmm.
York, and that's where we met. We got married. We both served at the same church in the middle school ministry, like you said. So I was the middle school pastor for about 9 years up there, and Elle oversaw all of our volunteers and small groups and stuff like that, amongst a lot of other stuff. So we got to work together forever. Doing ministry in a local church. Well, 9 years, I guess, is forever. It depends on how you mark your
That's
timeline.
right.
That's
But
forever in youth
no,
ministry.
and as like a youth pastor, you have to learn how to do a lot of different stuff.
Hmm.
So we were self-teaching ourselves like the entire Adobe suite. So learning how to graphic design, how to build websites, how to do video,
How to
audio
use
stuff.
MailChimp,
Yeah, learning like all the different tools. And
all the
so
things.
as church leaders, we started creating. We're very creative. We love to make stuff. Like that's one of the things that like drives us is to be able to wake up in the morning and think about, all right, what are we going to get to create today and make and like get in people's hands. And so we were doing that for our own like volunteers and parents and families. And then the things that we were making, we started putting up on our church website just to share like all the Photoshop files and the video files. And I don't know, like people, if you're like old school stuff you can use, people, you might remember like the big Angry Birds thing
Mm,
that we made. Like that
that
was
was a
one of our
hit.
first videos
That
that
was
really got some.
huge.
Yeah, so we started making all this stuff, putting it up on our church's website. Eventually, our church webmaster IT person was like, "Hey, you got to get this off the
Hmm.
website. Like there's too many downloads happening. It's kind of like
It's
it's
messing with
like
my live
costing
stream.
us.
Like,
We have to like buy additional server space." So
whoops.
like, okay, so that's how stuff you can use got born, and so
Hmm.
that's what we do now. We run this organization called StuffYouCanUse.org, and specifically the last 5 years now, we've been all in on our curriculum product, which is Grow Curriculum. So we kind of both quit our jobs 5 years ago on the same day and jumped into entrepreneurship full time to create Grow Curriculum.
Hmm.
And so that's what we've been doing. So, Elle, you want to talk about what that is or give more to the story?
Yeah. So, yeah, like if you mentioned the early days of stuff you can use. So back then we were kind of just like making miscellaneous things, right? Like Kenny mentioned the giant angry birds. There were a bunch of games that we would do. We would provide like different event ideas. We put together like a volunteer training strategy, like all this kind of miscellaneous stuff. But when we decided to go full time with stuff you can use, what we really wanted to do was to kind of take all of these little bits and pieces of things that we've been creating over the years and really put it into something cohesive and like really strategic. So, Grow Curriculum is what came out of that. And also out of like a lot of surveys of people, like, hey, what do you guys need? What's your biggest struggle in youth ministry? How can we help? And really like kind of what we saw and what folks we were talking to in youth ministry saw was like, man, it's kind of annoying that I have to like go here to get my curriculum, go over here to get my games, like kind of piece together this volunteer like training strategy. Like it's kind of all over the place. So what we really wanted to do was to bring all of that together into something that was really unified and cohesive. And so we knew that was a lot of stuff. We couldn't make it by ourselves. So we had to get a ton of really awesome people together. And basically what we wanted to do, and what we did end up doing with Grow Curriculum, is basically planning an entire year of youth ministry and giving you all of the resources for it, but in a way that's super customizable, because nobody wants to just use curriculum out of the box as is. That's boring. So everything we do in Grow is like your teaching, is all of your games, it's your discipleship, your volunteers training, your family engagement, your events, like all that stuff. So yeah, the whole idea is like anything that you do in a year, hopefully it is covered in Grow Curriculum. That's the idea.
Yeah, as a user, like I just have appreciated how easy it is. Like doing on the website with the Grow Curriculum, being able to click a button, and I'm not going to use that, but I can drag another piece in, and I want to add something that wasn't in there. Like that's always been huge because yeah, straight out of the
Mm-hmm.
box curriculum doesn't work. I think for
Yeah, no.
well, people make it work, but I don't think it's a great strategy. Because as a youth pastor, I know my students, and
Mm-hmm.
I know what's going to work with them, what's not going to work. Um,
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm thinking about the Angry Birds thing. Like I remember seeing that and going, okay, that's something we got to do. Uh, you guys did I forget what it's called, but you had like, you made it look like they were physical products, but in a box, but they were these downloads, um, like modules or something like that. But the
Yeah,
one, the
I
one
think you're
that,
talking youth ministry labs. It was like video
yes,
Mm-hmm.
course
yes,
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Kenny, the one that you did on games is so strong. I've used that so many times over the years when I've kind of gone, okay, I need to train. Like I love games, and so like
Mhm.
that's a passion. Like I'd love to do games. I love creating stuff, but I also know as a youth pastor, I can't just focus on that. So I have to continue to
Yeah.
give it away. So every time I've given that piece away uh, to a volunteer and a team of students, I show that video. So
That's
you guys are
amazing.
just,
Love it.
yeah, so
Well,
good.
and
And then
games are my passion too. You can even see behind us, we got the game
That's right.
shelf over here if you're
I
watching this
know.
video instead of audio. And then to our other corner, we got this arcade machine on the wall with our leaderboard for all of our guests that come to our home. So we are all about the fun.
We
We are
are.
all about the games, and we're all about strategy. So that's awesome that you were able to take that and use that game strategy. And
Mm-hmm.
then what like kind of Elle mentioned, we love that we can just make it customizable so you can hand it off to a volunteer and they can do it in your context.
Yeah.
Any piece of Grow. We try to create everything so that you, the church leader, don't have to do everything, but we create it so that you can hand it off to key
Mm-hmm.
volunteers, so they can like take bits and pieces of your ministry and like run with them. So that's awesome that you were able to do that and implement that in your ministry. That's actually really
Yeah,
encouraging to
it's super cool. Someday I want to come over and take the top mark on
go. Get
classroom
on
there.
board.
Yeah.
We got our top 40 on here right now. So see if you can break
So
in.
good. So good. The other thing I was going to say was I remember when I first moved to Southern California, I'd never used curriculum prior to moving to California 8 years ago, and they were using Orange, and I remember um, going, "Do I have to use it?" They're like, "Why don't you use it for a year?" And as a middle school pastor, I felt at the time I felt like it was just the high school curriculum with some questions pulled out to make it a little more middle schooly. And I remember when you guys came on, I didn't even know, I think I didn't know at the time you guys were there. I'm like, there's something has changed with the middle school curriculum. It's just gone like skyrocketed in how it looks and how it feels. And then I remember seeing you guys on social media, just that you were there. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
we
So it was
did
just like,
have a stint at Orange
We
where Elle
did.
oversaw all the middle school curriculum, and I was helping out with like middle school strategy and events and things like that too. Yeah, we absolutely love it. So glad that you were able to see some middle school additional resources
Mm-hmm.
pop in
Love
there.
it.
yeah, yeah. And then when I went to my last church, we quickly adopted Grow curriculum, and it's been powerful. Well, that's a lot of introduction there, but wanted to jump into the topic that we want to talk about today. Elle, as we were texting, you had a thought that something that I know you guys are super good at, and I'll just say this, that my office in my last church, I had a bulletin board that I had taken all of these cards that was based on the strategy that you guys put together with the Grow curriculum and all that, and people would walk into my room and they'd see this whole line of the whole year. Here's the series topics. Here's the games we're going to do. Here's the parent meetings and all that stuff. And people are like, oh my gosh, Eric, you're really organized, which I'm not. So just so thankful for that tool. But would love for you guys to just kind of run with it and start talking about strategizing and structuring a year of ministry.
Yeah. So that whole board that you're describing, that kind of came about by accident because what was happening was when we were creating Grow for the first time, I just needed to keep track of like all the stuff we were making, right? Because we're like, okay, I need this many games, I need this many lessons, I need like this like discipleship activity, all this stuff. So I'm like, man, we got a lot of content we have to keep track of here. So I started color coding it. And I'm like, okay, let's, do red for teaching. Let's do like yellow for all the games. Let's do orange for discipleship. And I just kind of built out like this big board for myself to keep it all straight. And then Kenny and I were looking at it and we're like, actually, this is really good.
Yeah, we got to give this to the people. This needs to be front and center because imagine as like a youth pastor, like you said, putting this big, colorful organizational board up that has your whole year with, and Grow, we kind of mentioned them briefly, but we break youth ministry down into 6 key areas. So that's like discipleship, teaching, events, families,
Weekly
volunteers,
programming.
and programming.
Yeah.
So we throw all of that up on a board. And as a youth pastor, it's amazing because when your lead pastor walks in, or if a parent or a volunteer walks in, all of a sudden they think you are super organized. You are like perfect for the job. And that's really what we're trying to do too, is really help out church leaders, make them feel organized and good, and help them be actually strategic and organized in their ministry.
One of the things that Kenny and I talk about a lot, and Kenny, you've actually already mentioned it in the last few minutes, is like Kenny has very specific areas of expertise when it comes to ministry, as do I, and they are different. Like we do not operate in the same hemisphere when it comes to like our favorite things about ministry. Kenny loves the games, he loves the big events, he loves like the crazy programming. I love like the volunteer stuff, like the discipleship, like, okay, let me like get in and do some relational ministry stuff here. And so what we learned, and what I think youth pastors sometimes will struggle with if nobody tells them that this is just the nature of their reality, is that nobody is good at all of those areas of ministry. It doesn't come naturally for everybody in every area. And that's okay.
Yeah,
that's
and that's
totally fine.
normal, and that's expected. Normal. And if you are good at every area, you probably should be doing something else because your skills have surpassed the job. Like, that's right. Like a normal youth pastor that's out there, like we definitely need the help of more people and more brains and more ideas. And so what we're going to do today is kind of walk through the 6 areas that we've identified and just kind of break down that strategy really quickly to kind of explain what it is, how you would implement it in your ministry, and then maybe some ideas of like how to hand off certain things to key volunteers or how to bring people onto your team to be able to help you grow and sustain and lead your ministry.
Yep.
So why don't we jump in and do that? Elle,
let's do it.
Take us through it.
Okay, I'm ready. All right, so there are 6 areas of ministry that we're going to go through. And is there a way, Eric, to put like some pictures like in like the show notes or something?
I was going to ask you, is there any post-production with this?
There's definitely post-production. So yes, we can put in all sorts of stuff afterwards.
We'll give you some graphics.
All right, great. Love it. Okay, so if you're listening to the podcast version of this, you just have to use like your imagination or go watch the video as well. But okay, so Eric was talking about this like beautiful board that he built. So here's what we want you to picture: a giant board. We recommend 48 by 48 inches if you're making your own. And then picture like little mini business card sized cards in 6 different colors.
And here's the thing: if you do subscribe to Grow, and we're not trying to make this a Grow commercial by any means, but if you do, we will send you an entire pack, like a deck of cards that are already color coded, and you can put them up. It makes it nice and easy. But of course, you can just go to like Walmart, buy some colored cards, and put them up on your own board.
Exactly. We are here to give you all the secrets away. Okay, so what you're going to do is on your board, you're going to build 12 columns, 1 for every month of the year. We start ours in August, like the beginning of the school year, but you can start it wherever you want. It really doesn't matter. You can start it for next week if you feel like it. So just make those 12 columns. And then what we're going to do is we're going to like add things to the calendar in layers. What we like to do is to kind of take the different areas of your ministry and start there. So like we like to start with discipleship because we see discipleship as the lens that we want to see our entire year through. So we like to put that up on the calendar first, because then if that's on there, any future decision that you're trying to make about like an event you want to plan or a sermon you want to teach, you have your discipleship strategy on your board, and that can help you kind of guide your decisions. So if we're going to do discipleship first, here's kind of how we approach it. We believe that when we talk about discipleship, what we're talking about is creating rhythms, like spiritual habits and spiritual practices that will help kids, teenagers, adults, anybody become more like Jesus. And so the 4 spiritual habits that we really like to emphasize is, number 1, spend time with God. So that's personal spiritual disciplines. Number 2, spend time with others. That would be like Christ-like community. Number 3 is know and use your gifts. And number 4 is share your story. So if you've got all 4 of those things, what we like to do is to break the year into 4 quarters and choose 1 quarter per spiritual habit. So for example, the fall, we like to focus on spending time with others because it's kind of the beginning of a new school year, a great time to help build community with teenagers, all that good stuff. So we'll focus on that spiritual habit for the entire quarter. And then for the next quarter, we pick a new spiritual habit, et cetera, et cetera. So 4 big orange cards up on the board to explain your discipleship strategy.
And if you want to get more details and in depth on these, we're going to walk through the rest of them. You can go to like growcurriculum.org/meeting,
Yes.
and you can see a video of us actually building out an entire board. You can download some like free samples and kind of see how it all works together. But so that's the first thing, discipleship. And that's the lens through which we see the entire year of ministry through. And then that informs us, which the next layer is our teaching strategy. So what we did at Grow was kind of survey. We had, I don't know, tons and tons of youth pastors either on our email list or in our Facebook groups or through our podcast or whatever. And we just asked them, like, what are the most important topics that you guys are teaching every single year? Because we could have came up with them, but we really wanted to invite the youth ministry community and kind of like source this out to everybody. Like, what do we think holistically as like a community are the important things to teach? And so inside of Grow, we've identified like, I don't know how many, 13 or 14 topics. Most of them we hit every single year because, you know, repetition is really good, but you hit them with like different parts of the Bible,
angles.
Different scripture, different angles, different series themes.
Yeah, if
but
you're talking
like,
about friendship, you don't want to give the same friendship series every year. That's so boring. So
Yeah.
you got to find new ways to hit the subject.
Yeah. So you identify your topics, get that bank of topics, and then you can put those topics on your calendar, and then you can start thinking about, okay, what scripture references do we want to use?
Yep.
Is there, if you like teaching with like series, a lot of churches love series. We love series. They're like engaging and fun, and you can make graphics, especially for teenagers. It's perfect. So then you can start thinking about those like series themes and stuff. But yeah, so when you're thinking about your teaching strategy, identify what those important topics are, and you can find ours at Grow Curriculum, like I said, or you can talk to your lead pastor, talk to your children's pastor, like even inside your own church. I would highly recommend talking it out with your team and saying, what do we want to teach as a church? Like, what are the most important things to us, and how do we get this into teenagers' brains every single year?
Yep.
So that would be like how you would go about doing your teaching strategy. And Elle, before we move on to the next one, do you want to just list the topics that we came up with real quickly, just to give some ideas to the people?
Yeah, I do. But now I got to remember all 14 words.
They're not even on here?
Well, yeah, they're on. Okay, so here's an example. Authority is one. That's like an every other year. Friendship, that's every year. Doubt and questions is every year. Loving others is every year. Christmas is every year. Justice is every year. Spiritual habits is every year. Easter is every year, because that happens every year as well as Christmas. Evangelism, wisdom, and family. Those are some examples. And we have a couple others too that cycle
we
in
do a
every
whole
other year.
series on Jesus specifically every year. And then in kids ministry,
That's
it's a whole different thing.
That's a whole other ball
We
game.
teach, different thing. But, and that's like, we like really believe in thinking about your audience, and for this audience it would be teenagers,
Yeah.
people in your youth group, and like what is most important for them to learn at this stage in their spiritual development, and how do we teach it in an age appropriate way for them to be able to apply it to their lives right now. Like the same thing you're teaching like a retired person isn't the same thing. You're not going to teach it the same way to a teenager necessarily, because they're in different stages of life. And so we really believe it's important to like teach it in a way that's age appropriate. So that's all part of your teaching strategy.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say about the teaching strategy too. So like the buckets of topics that we listed can make it sound like every series is only topical, but I would really encourage you to not teach that way if you can. Like for sure, sometimes topical series make the most sense. Like for example, if you're going to do a friendship series, maybe you're kind of picking and choosing different people throughout scripture from different books, Old and New Testament, all that. But you really want to kind of do book studies and character studies as well. And so you can do that even with this kind of topical approach to you might look at the concept of doubt and questions and through the whole Exodus story and kind of do that through the lens of doubt and questions. Like, what kind of questions do you think the people of Israel had throughout this experience? Like, what is God teaching us about trusting God throughout this experience? So you want to mix and match those kind of random overview types of series with like deep dives into certain stories, into certain characters, into certain books of scripture.
All right, and we're going to move on to the next thing. But the last thing I want to say, just as Elle's saying that about your teaching strategy, this is why I do believe it's important as a youth pastor, even if you don't want to stick to a curriculum verbatim, it is awesome because you get an entire team of people with ideas. So even when Elle was talking about doubts and questions and thinking about the Israelites and like their doubts and their questions and how they navigated that, I'm like, oh man, I would have never thought of it that way. It's awesome to have people. No, that's great. Like, because it's great because we have literally hundreds of contributors and writers and editors and brain power that go into a series, and so do like every other curriculum. So some people don't like curriculum because they're like, I want God to speak through me. But although of course you want that, if you're only leaning on your own brain and your own experience and what you've personally learned, you're going to be missing out on different perspectives and a whole vast, the entire body of Christ has so much experience that's beyond one person. So anyway, that's just a little plug. Any curriculum, like I highly recommend using it even as just like
a launching pad,
as like your research team, like a team that's out there doing study, who's bringing you ideas, and then that can help inform the Holy Spirit through you and like what you want to actually teach. So anyway, plug for curriculum in general. All right, next up, we talk about programming in Grow. And so the programming study is different for every age group, or the programming strategy, I mean, is different for every age group. For youth ministry, what we really like to focus on is creating an environment where students love to be at. So
where they're having fun.
Teenagers inviting their friends. We want teenagers excited, like on the way to church. We want them excited to come to your program, right? Like not to dread it, not to think that, oh man, it's like summer school or like another thing I have to go to. So
and
how do you create an environment where kids want to be at?
Exactly. And we want them to feel like you like them, like sometimes our ministries, when they're not age appropriate, communicates this idea that like we actually don't want you to be here as a teenager. We want you to show up and act like a grown up, which isn't really valuing the phase that these kids are in. So by infusing fun into everything that we do, we're letting teenagers know like, hey, we love you the way that you are. We actually really enjoy you. And so we're going to have some fun and play some games and be silly because we know that's what connects with you at this point in your life. And you're not here because you're not a 40-year-old person. So we're gonna treat you a little differently than we do the grown-ups at church.
Right. And there's a strategy behind playing games and having fun. Like sometimes I see in Facebook groups like youth pastors complaining like, oh, I feel like churches are just too focused on games and pizza. I'm like, yo, you have to use games and pizza to actually engage kids relationally, and that will open up the door to have some really serious conversation later. If you just have them walk in the door and you just want to be serious, they're not going to connect with you. You have to just have that relational equity with them, and you do that by having fun. I mean, if you're going to take somebody out on a date, or if you're going to try to make a new friend, you're not going to just jump straight into the Bible and like weird. That's not how you get to know each other. First, you want to get to know each other, and then you can have some really powerful and impactful conversations later in like small group. And so like the whole day of ministry, the way that we think about programming is like, okay, when they walk in the door, how do we engage them with the most fun and make them feel loved, and then continue that process? And then finally, by the end, when you're in small groups, how do you actually have those serious and spiritual conversations with them?
Awesome. So to just kind of wrap up this whole programming strategy and what this could look like on your actual board, what you want to do is you want to look at each of those teaching series that you put up on the board, and you want to think about, okay, what is like a theme I can pair with that series that will be the fuel for like my graphics, for the games that we play, for the music that we play. Like, what is that theme gonna look like? I mean, is it like a road trip themed series to talk about friendship? Is it like, if you're doing this deep dive into the book of Exodus, is it like all Exodus themed? What is that going to look like? So you want to identify that theme and then figure out ways to pull out games, music, graphics, all of that good stuff. And so you just want to put those cards up on the board. We use the color yellow for weekly programming for basically no reason at all. It's just the one we picked.
All right. So far we've talked about discipleship. Then we talked about our teaching strategy. Then we talked about programming. And next we're going to talk about events.
Yes.
And so, man, there's been so many phases in my ministry career of like event strategy. And I think the thing that we landed on that has been most effective, that we've seen over and over again at the churches that we've been at or served at, is like doing the least amount of events for the most impact. And so kind of how that we've like landed on a good rhythm, at least in our opinion, and you can do whatever you want, whatever makes sense for your church and context. But for us, that's like one event a quarter. And that could be like a spring retreat. That might be a fall, like back to school kickoff. That might be a winter, like Christmas party. You know, just like choose like one outside of your normal programming time to do like some kind of gathering with your students and leaders, to do some event once every quarter.
Yep.
And so then what you do is you identify when and what events you want to do, and then put them on your board under the months that you want to do them. And so you're also thinking about your church's rhythm, right? Like maybe every winter your church does some kind of serving campaign. So maybe your event is tied to that, so you can kind of holistically tie into your church. Or maybe there's like a big like kids ministry thing that happens and you want to like partner with them. Like whatever you want to do, depends what your like philosophy is ministry wise for your church, but figure out where those events go, where you want to put them, and then put them up on your board so you can see them every time you walk in your office. So, and that's why I love these boards too, because then when you walk in, you're like, okay, we're teaching this month. You can see it right in front of you and remind you like, okay, what's happening in the next like few months. You see that event so you don't forget it. Half the time, as a youth pastor, it was like, oh yeah, we got that event coming up in a few weeks. I need to get a flyer now. Like, you know, you're like always behind. So you
forget what day it is and what day you plan the event for.
Like, okay, we need to get flyers made. We need to get the announcement this Wednesday. It's like in 2 days.
Right.
Like, guys, we need to be more prepared than that.
That's
so at least if you see it on your board, you'll be reminded of like, oh yeah, these color-coded things are coming down the pipeline.
And like just the fact that you already made these decisions like up to a year in advance is so comforting, just to be like, okay, I don't have to sit down every single week and try to figure out what I'm doing this week, what I'm doing this month, what I'm doing next month. Like I already made that decision and now I just have to go execute it. So 4 events in the year. And then if you also do mission experiences, tack that on as a bonus. If you do summer camp, tack that on as a bonus. But once you have them up on the board, what you can do is, again, look back at those discipleship cards that you put up at the very top to see like, hey, could these actually influence the timing of the events that I'm trying to do and the type of events that I'm trying to do. So that's why we're trying to put all of this up on a board so you can see how all of this works together, right? So for example, if you said in the fall, I want my spiritual habit focus to be spending time with others in Christ-like community, then hey, the event that I want to do in the fall, I want to make sure it is geared toward really helping like small groups connect with each other, or really helping new kids get plugged into a community. That needs to be super closely tied into everything that I do. Or if in the spring you're focusing on spending spending time with God, then maybe you do like a weekend retreat where that's kind of a deep dive into discipleship for maybe like your core students. In the summer, if you're talking about, sharing your story, then maybe that's when you do your mission experiences because you're already talking about
Yep.
evangelism. Tie all
Exactly.
those things
It's
together.
like sharing your story is the discipleship
Mhm.
strat part, and then you got the evangelism series that you're teaching, and then the missions trip event that you're doing, and so
It
it all
all
works
ties
together.
together.
It's like it makes ministry so nice
Mhm.
and fun to like implement.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got events on the board
That's
now.
right.
So next, we start thinking about volunteers and families. And so let's talk about volunteers real quickly. And families is a pretty similar strategy in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. But for volunteers, we really identified, I think, 7
Mhm.
ways to like really support and train and equip your volunteers and
Yeah.
celebrate your volunteers, which
Mhm.
is, and that was one thing that we had to overhaul in our ministry. When Elle kind of came on board, we looked at our volunteer situation and was like, hey, we
Not
have
good.
we have a lot of volunteers that aren't showing up on a regular basis. We have a big need for more volunteers. We
Mhm.
feel like we don't really have a good like support system. We're not communicating well with them. There was so many holes and gaps because when I was doing it by myself, right? I love the programming, I love the teaching and the worship and the games, and like the volunteers and the families were not as high on my like skill and priority list. And so those were where the gaps were. And so having this strategy
Mhm.
ensures that you can at least identify what you want to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
So Elle, quickly,
Yeah.
could you just tell us about these 7 things
I
and kind
will.
of how we used them in our ministry and what they look like?
I will. So these 7 things are actually also the 7 things for families. So if you happen to be taking notes, you get to only have to write it down once. Okay, so here we go. First thing would be events for volunteers. That's like a big kickoff event in the beginning of the school year to cast vision, get your team excited. Second would be meetings. These are where you're actually training your team on something specific, like not something that you could put into an email, but something that you need to actually sit there and teach and discuss. So those meetings, you can kind of do whatever rhythm works best for you. What we really enjoy doing is getting our team together every other month. That felt really sustainable to us. And so sometimes that was for a meeting, sometimes it was for the kickoff event, sometimes it was just for like a Christmas party or something like that. But we wanted to make sure our whole team was together every other month. So meetings are a great reason to get your people together.
Volunteer team is what
Volunteer
you're talking
team.
about.
Yes, thank you. Then you've got volunteer discussion groups. This is something that we sort of stumbled into that worked really, really well for us. Basically, the idea is you're getting sort of a focus group of your volunteers together. So not the whole team, but just maybe like a few of them who are doing ministry in a similar age group or in a similar like role. Maybe if you have like a food service team, you get that team together to kind of talk. And really what this is meant to do is to, not for you to download information to them, but for you to ask them like, hey, how are things going? Like what struggles are you experiencing that we can help each other solve? Do you have any like fun creative ideas that you want to share? Do you have any big wins that you want to talk about? So the idea is just getting your people to really train each other in a sense, instead of you being the expert telling them how to do their job. So that's the discussion groups. Then you've got volunteer one-on-one conversations. This is where you are maybe sitting across from with some coffee with a volunteer. You're giving them feedback on their role as a volunteer. You're getting feedback from them about what it's like to serve in your ministry and under your leadership. So that's fun for everyone.
But it's
But
necessary.
it
It's kind of
is.
almost like a performance
Yes.
review, but also like a little
Relationship
more
building too.
encouraging and
Mhm.
more relationship building than just that. Because most of the time we only see our volunteer teams at church.
Yeah.
And so it's really important, I believe, to like spend time with them outside of church as
Mhm.
well. And so that's why it's great to have these like one-on-one conversations at Starbucks or grab lunch or
Yep.
breakfast or whatever, and just sporadically plan those throughout the year. So that's where this like board, this calendar comes into play. So you got your meetings up there, you put your discussion groups up there, you put these one-on-one conversations up there, so you can kind of space everything out. And so it's not like overwhelming. It
Don't
sounds
overwhelm
like a
anybody.
ton of stuff to do, but like we're talking about one meeting every other month.
Yeah.
We're talking about a discussion group maybe a couple times a year.
Yeah.
We're talking about one-on-one conversations with your volunteers a couple times a year outside of church. So like if you can plan these things and spread them out, it sounds like a lot, but it's actually really easy to
Yeah.
execute if you schedule them the right way.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So then there's two more pieces in the volunteer strategy. There's the volunteer communication. So that is you connecting with your team through email, through social media, through texting, whatever. Put that up on your calendar so that you actually do it. And also volunteer celebrations. So once a month, what's one thing you can do to celebrate your team, whether that is doing birthday cards or celebrating a weird holiday or doing a little appreciation campaign for them, whatever that looks like, just celebrate them in some way. And that should be 7.
Yeah,
Oh
and
no,
just
volunteer tools. That's the last
oh
one.
yeah, tools.
Just
Those
some
are things
handy,
like a
yes.
volunteer handbook. Maybe you want to give that to your volunteers, or maybe we would make these like small group leader business cards and you can hand those to them so they can give those out to kids and families. Just like whatever little tools. We had volunteer goals that we created for our volunteer team. And so it was like depending on what they did, whether it was a small group leader or a cafe worker or
Yeah.
whatever, they had specific goals they were trying to meet every quarter or so. And so we would just encourage them, hey, check these things off, all the different tools.
Yeah.
And just like I mentioned, for our programming strategy, we were trying to create an environment where kids love to come to. For our volunteer strategy, we're trying to create a program where our volunteers love to serve at. So if they feel equipped and supported and celebrated, they're gonna love serving with you. Like this was kind of the secret that we unlocked and like stumbled upon, like Al said, is all of a sudden when we implemented this volunteer strategy in our ministry, we no longer had a need for volunteers. And I'm not saying this is going to be the same results for every single church in every context, but we went from having like a big need to find people to all of a sudden over the course of the year, people really enjoyed it and started inviting their friends to come serve with them. And we, for a short period of time, had a wait list to volunteer in our ministry.
That
and
was
we were
fun.
like, how did this happen? It's because we were celebrating them and supporting them and meeting with them. And they felt like more connected and empowered to do ministry than they ever had before. So sometimes we kind of forget how important it is to spend a lot of our time as ministry leaders investing in the adults when we think our job as a youth pastor is to just minister to kids, but it really is to like build up these adults so that they can minister in the lives of kids. So if you're not spending a lot of time focused on the adults that are serving in your ministry, you're missing a big opportunity for growth and to sustain like a really healthy ministry. We're all about like health in ministry. So this is what this strategy is going towards, is to end up in a very healthy spot so that you're not like struggling, and like you still might go through struggles, you still might have dry spouts during your ministry tenure, but at least if you're focusing on a strategy like this, it will put you in a better place to potentially have a very healthy ministry.
Yeah, and the reason that there are so many different kind of layers to this strategy is because like every person needs multiple kinds of touch points when it comes to ministry, and like we know this like intuitively, but sometimes we just need to spell it out in a strategy to make sure that we are actually strategically hitting all of those different touch points. So teenagers, for example, that's why we have discipleship, teaching, programming, and events, like 4 different strategies that are all geared toward investing in teenagers in different ways. But then in the volunteer strategy, that's why we have all 7 of these things, because some of your volunteers are really going to connect with and really need those like regular meeting times. They're going to find a ton of value in that. Others, maybe that's not highest on their priority list, but being able to sit down one-on-one with you over coffee is going to be super huge for their development and for their buy-in in your ministry. And so as you're kind of doing all of these things in a rhythm that is sustainable for you, you will have a much better shot at hitting everybody on your team in the ways that matter the most to them. So yeah, that's that's volunteer strategy.
Last part we're going to talk about today is our family strategy, how we're engaging families in our ministry. And so the 7 things we just listed: events, meetings, discussion groups, one-on-one conversations, tools, and celebrations. Is
and
that
communication.
all of them? And communication.
You nailed
Those
it.
are the same 7 things we recommend thinking about for families as well. And so like the events that we're talking about, these might be like father-daughter date nights or like a mother-son, I don't know, spa day. Like we had all these different like ideas, but think about what makes sense in your context, and maybe you can find like ask, like, go into some of these youth ministry Facebook groups and find out, like, what events are you doing to engage parents or families in your ministry. And
The
then, like,
small group leader parent breakfast is a really
yeah.
important
Oh
one
my
for
gosh. The
us.
small group leader parent breakfast like changed the way that we did ministry and the buy-in to parents and what we were doing. Then we have like discussion groups. So same thing with volunteers, you're creating these little discussion groups that you're just kind of getting feedback from, and you want to hear, like, you just ask them, parents, how, like, what's the biggest struggle raising a teenager?
Yeah.
And just let them talk it out. Like, they might want a place to talk about this
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I don't know if every parent has a place to talk about the struggles or the like things that they're dealing with or the questions they have.
And
so
even
if
like,
you can get a group of parents together, it's almost like a therapy group for them too.
right, right. Even like, hey, what's like the most helpful thing that our ministry either has done or could do for your family? That you might get some like mind-blowing answers where you're like, oh, this thing that I thought was just so dumb is actually really, really helpful. Or, oh my goodness, this thing that they're requesting would actually be so easy for me to pull off, and it just never crossed my mind before. So you're looking to learn from them and with them, not to teach them in that environment. So that's the discussion groups. Parent meetings are also important, maybe not on a regular basis, but at least during key things like before a camp or before a weekend retreat or whatever it looks like. But those kind of informational meetings, you do need those on the calendar at some point. Going back to the events, a huge one that we just added to grow this past year that everybody is really, really loving so far are these parent workshops. So like once a year, just doing one big like training event for parents to show up and just get actually some like content to teach them and help them be a better parent, help them disciple their kids better at home. So that's a big one. So put that under the event category.
So, I mean, we could start wrapping up. I know we've been talking about this for so long.
There's so many things.
You're thinking about volunteers. We talked a lot about that. I mean, think about those same type of things for parents. Like, how do you celebrate them? What do you want to communicate? What's the rhythm? We recommend like once a month emails to parents, where we recommend every week emails to volunteers. Like, volunteers need the information to be prepared for what they do. Parents, maybe you just email them once a month. Hey, here's what we're going to be teaching over the next month. Here's kind of what the small group questions are going to look like and the topics, and send that off to parents. They're going to love it. The one-on-one conversations. I mean, imagine being a parent and the youth pastor of your church reached out and like, hey, want to grab lunch? I just want to get to know you more. You know, your kid is in my youth group. We love them. They're like a great participant. And I just want to, partner with you in a greater way and find out if I can serve you any better. Or maybe there's something that I'm doing that's rubbing you the wrong way. Like, I'd love to hear that too. So just like all these connection points. So to wrap it all up, like, man, it sounds like a ton of things to do, but you have to think about, Eric, what you said earlier. There's ways to hand these off to key volunteers. So if you have people in your ministry, whether, some of us are lucky enough to have staff on our team and you can hand some of this off to them. Some of us, we rely on volunteers, and that's most churches are
or
relying
just
on
really
volunteers.
excited teenagers who want to take on more leadership in the ministry.
Maybe there's a teenager that wants to run games. Maybe there's a teenager that wants to run your communication and your social media.
Your volunteer celebrations, like if a teenager led the volunteer celebrations, that makes my heart melt. I want that.
So the thing is not to burden you to like do all of these things, even though if you're full-time, I believe it's possible. If you're part-time, you probably need more help to accomplish everything on this calendar. But also pick and choose the things you want to do. You also don't have to do every single thing that we just mentioned. Maybe you want to focus on your discipleship strategy for the next 6 months. All right, do that. And then you want to add on volunteers after that. And then you want to add on families. Like, you don't have to tackle it all at once. You don't have to do every single piece. But if you have the capacity to start implementing these things, we really believe it's going to help you be more prepared, more strategic, and just a better equipped minister in the lives of the kids and families in your community, which is ultimately what we're trying to be, is like the highest quality ministry leader we can to our families and communities that we're surrounded with. So that's what we're hoping Grow helps people do. And so far, so good. We've gotten a lot of great ideas. Like, every single year, we are changing things and adding things and like tweaking the strategies or adding resources. So we absolutely love hearing the feedback in the stuff. You can use Facebook group and through whatever means, emails and all sorts of stuff. But talk to other church leaders, either in your local church network. If you have we used to have this local youth pastor network, and I'd always be going to those meetings and like learning from them and hearing the events and ideas and the things that they're doing. And now you can do that even in a broader way on Facebook and connect with people online. So that's the grow, or really the strategy that we recommend for
The
ministry
growth
that
strategy that
we
you can
have put
steal.
into grow. Yeah, take
Yeah,
it, use it. Even if you never buy grow, that's
we don't
totally
care.
cool. We just want to help people be better at what they do. And so hopefully this is
Hmm.
helpful.
You guys, that is awesome. And I just want to say what you just said, like I of course you want people to buy the curriculum because that, that helps the bottom line. But I know your heart in that you just want to share and make people better. And you want to help youth pastors, youth workers to be better in what they're doing. So I think that's awesome. That's clear in what you guys talk about on a regular basis, clear what you post. Um, there's a couple things I wanted to highlight before we sign off. You mentioned the Facebook page. That's a really active, really strong Facebook group. Um, I mean,
And
there's
highly
questions.
moderated. Sometimes you
Yes.
Very
get in
highly
these
motivated.
Facebook groups and they just let like these conversations go off the rails. In the stuff you can use Facebook group, we shut that down quick. We
Oh my
have, I don't
goodness.
know, 20, 25
Somewhere
moderators
in there.
in the group that are constantly monitoring the
Hmm.
conversations, keeping them encouraging and uplifting and helpful. And yeah, I think there's like,
And hopefully free of self-promotion.
right, yeah, we also don't want it to become like a just
Man,
a
those
marketplace in
Facebook
there.
groups can be scary.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yes.
thank you for saying.
I've been denied by one of my posts before. So I get it.
Yeah, hey, I get those messages all the time. How come my post wasn't approved?
Like,
I'm like,
sorry, we love you
well,
though.
maybe if you didn't just like keep posting your own blog posts in there, then we
Hmm.
let it in. I'm not saying
Exactly.
that's
Not
good. I'm
Eric.
not saying that's good. But like, we try to keep it genuine youth
Yeah.
ministry
Yeah.
conversation.
No, it's
So,
so good. It's so good. The other thing I was looking at on here, the two things about the board, not like I mentioned, it made me look good when someone walks in, like when my pastor walks in and sees this board, it just it almost like, okay, he's got it taken care of. That my youth pastor's good, like that makes me look good. But it also, oh, you mentioned this, like helps you to keep that stuff in front of you so you're not going, oh my gosh, shoot, we have an outreach event next week and I haven't done anything for it. Well, you're not going to do it then, or you're going to pull it off and it's not going to be nearly as good as having it laid out and planned, which is awesome. Um, and you guys do deep dives, like back on the Grow curriculum, you do deep dives every month on that specific month that I like. I would always watch because I'm like, this is really helpful for me to have greater insight into the content.
Hmm.
It's been super helpful. Um, oh, and the apps. You didn't talk about the apps, but the
Yeah.
apps, oh my gosh.
We do have a lot
That
of
yeah,
apps.
this was just a strategy talk, but yeah, we are, stuff you can use in general. Not only are we trying to create the best curriculum content and like resources we can, we are going all in on our software products too. So we're like creating apps and trying to solve problems. And that's another great thing about the Facebook group is when we
Hmm.
hear people talk about, hey, what do you guys do for this? Is there like a platform or an app? I'm not finding what I'm looking for. We always are trying to create solutions, and now we're diving. We have like a full development team and all this stuff. Like we're creating digital like software solutions for a lot of problems. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like the Grow, I think you can use it for free, but when you get the Grow, that the app that comes with it for your small group leaders and icebreakers and all that stuff, like so like and customizable. Like I use that with my volunteers and was able to tweak the questions to fit our students. And then the Games app, oh my gosh, you guys, you give away so much stuff for free that
We
is like
do.
huge. And I remember like it was several years ago when you're first doing the app, the Games app. I had sent you a message, Kenny, about like something that would be really helpful. And all of a sudden I see in the app that piece is in there. I'm like, I don't know if it was just because of me or you had 100 people asking the same question, but I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah,
The other
yeah.
thing
We are in touch with what the people are
We
talking
we
about.
are just
We
here
yes,
to
want
grant
yes, you are.
feedback.
wishes. Just
Yeah.
want to grant
Yeah.
all the wishes all the
Please
time.
tell us how we
Yes.
can help you better, and we will try our best to do it.
So I think if you guys could do my audience a favor,
Yes.
would you be willing to give them away like a free trial of your Grow curriculum?
We sure can.
Yeah.
You could just, I mean, honestly, we already do that for everybody. You could
I
go to growth.org and just click on free trial, and you get an entire series. So you get an entire teaching series. So I mean,
We could pretend that this was
it's
just
not
my
even
Eric
just like a
class.
free
Yeah.
trial. Like here's like a glimpse at what a week might look like.
No,
We
we give
give
you
you a
so
You
full
get
many
the
course.
treats.
whole thing.
Yeah.
Teach the full series, try it out. We give you like a discipleship activity in there, some volunteer resources, some family
I
resources.
think the free teaching series right now, as of October 2022, is a series called Rad, which is talking about
So
the
good.
book of James and comparing Jesus words to the words of James. I really love that series, and it's a whole '90s vibe. It's pretty yummy. I like it a lot.
It, it's a
Yeah, just
great
go to
series.
growcurriculum.org and click free trial, and you'll get in and you can
Woohoo!
sample some
I'll
stuff.
put
And
that.
not only when you click that do you get a free trial of the student ministry stuff, but also the kids ministry and our adult curriculum as well. So you could take a look at everything we're doing and see what might make sense for your ministry and if you want to try it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did try to play that off like you guys were going to get something free because okay, but so maybe we can do this. I know some of these youth pastors work with kids. Could you by any chance give them away some free VBS stuff?
Eric, you now this is a big
I
ask.
don't
You know,
know if
I
you are
VBS.
I
working.
know, but I just think we're
He
close
is.
enough.
Yeah.
You know, Eric, a free VBS seems like a really big ask, but in fact, we will do this for you. We will actually provide 3 different free VBSs for you that you can choose from
Oh
if you
my
would like.
goodness.
So just go to
Oh
growcurriculum.org,
no.
click on VBS, and you'll have access to 3 free
Is it 3 or
VBSs.
4? It's 3, right? 3
We're
and 4 is in
Yeah,
progress
4 is coming out
in December.
very soon. Yeah, we're wrapping it up right now and getting it ready to release so that people can start using it in 2023.
Yeah, and
Your
actually, I
willingness.
some people use the kids VBS for middle school. I mean, you have to age it up a little bit, but we provide preteen hacks with our all of our kids
Yeah.
curriculum. So I've seen some people who have aged it up for middle school successfully. So
Yeah,
yeah,
your willingness to do that just for my audience is, gosh, you guys are so amazing. We
you're
actually used
welcome.
it last year, and the church, I just forwarded the email to the kids director at my old church, just a reminder. She's like, "Oh, I hadn't seen it. This is great for next summer." So, all right,
Yay!
we're going to do 5 quick questions. All right, you ready?
Let's
Ready?
do it.
All right, favorite camp memory.
Okay,
Uh,
here is
Put you on the
mine.
spot.
I have one. So
okay.
I was kind of a troublemaker as a kid, still am. I love to make some trouble and just like, some like surprising things and win competitions. I always loved the
You do
camps
love
where like
competition.
somebody comes out as the winner, and I always wanted to be that. So when I was a kid, there was this like we would do this team cheer kind of thing. And I took the verse from Proverbs. Everyone was going so hard, like repping themselves, like our team's the best, we're better than you, like so prideful, right? And I'm thinking, we're gonna subvert this entire thing. I was like
Kenny,
13 years old. We're gonna subvert this whole thing, and I'm gonna come with like the psalm or the
the most
proverb. It
humble.
was like it was like giving your enemies cold water is like dumping burning coals on their head or something like that. There was some like proverb like that or something. So we just put very like serene music on for our
Yeah.
team cheer and just poured water and handed it to all of our
Okay.
competition and ended up winning the team cheer. It was amazing. Oh yeah, and we had someone with like quietly like say the verse and like had like a sign with the verse and just walked around as we gave people
That's
water.
funny.
They were
Wow.
like promoting themselves so hard.
That's
So
really kind of
yeah,
wicked
that
of
was
you.
my favorite
That's
camp memory.
amazing. All right, Elle, this
I
one's
have,
for you. Oh, no,
okay,
go ahead.
ready?
Go ahead. Go for it.
No, go for it. Oh.
I was going to say, what's the book you give away the most?
Ooh. Oh, I give away so many books. That's my problem. Okay, I would probably say, well, okay, I have a very significant library of books and I hand books out all the time. But one thing that we do as a team with stuff you can use is we've given away a ton of books to our team. So, like, I'll kind of curate a book that I think our team could use. And then I'm like, hey, everybody, go get this book if you want it. So that's what I'm leaning toward right now. The one that I probably recommend and give away the most to our team and youth pastors might be Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. It is so good and it's such a fun read. It's very like scribbly, like he's an artist as well as a writer. So it's like a really fun, like visual looking book. And it's just about the creative process and how to be more creative and how to steal ideas from different sources without being a plagiarizer. So it's
That's
very
awesome.
wonderful. Yeah, it's great.
All right, Kenny, artist or band that you listen to that people would be surprised to hear?
Oh, artist or band? Okay, let's go band because I mean, art.
You don't listen to a lot of
I
music.
do love Beeple Crap, or well, I mean, Beeple Crap is his Instagram, but Beeple, he's like a digital artist. He actually had the highest selling NFT or like highest selling artwork. It
Yeah.
wasn't NFT. It was like $41 million recently or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
anyway, let's see, band. I'm not much of a music listener. I was in a band for a few years, and I kind of got musiced out.
You did.
But I mean, I just love like creative artists. Anytime something new is coming on, like I just was watching Kendrick Lamar and SNL. I really love like keeping up with people who are like really good at what they do. And like really kind of pushing boundaries and doing stuff. I love watching documentaries about artists and like musicians. I don't know. One song that I really got hooked on this weekend is
Oh
called
gosh.
Taste the Biscuit.
Oh my
So
God.
just go onto YouTube. It's by a band called Toasters and Moose. And go on to YouTube, Taste the Biscuit by Toasters and Moose. And you will not regret it.
That's
Yep.
amazing. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's fun. I'm glad we get to share that moment right there. Okay, uh, the last question is where can people find you online? Yeah, there are a few posts on there. I put up they're on your screen there. You can see, they both have 100. You both have 100 letters in your Instagram and Twitter hot names. But hey, thank you guys so much for jumping on and doing this. This is, like I said, the strategy concept is so stinking helpful. It's so good and so encouraging, and I know has made me a better youth pastor as a result. And that's that's your heart, right? It's helping others be better and do what they do to a higher capacity. And the stereotypical youth pastor, that's not everybody watching, but the stereotypical youth pastor doesn't have a lot of strategy or um, thought behind, because there's always the next thing's coming, the next thing's coming. So to have this kind of thing available is so significant. So thank you both so much for what you do and for helping people like me around the world do what I do better. I really appreciate you guys. Yeah. And for you guys watching, if you would like a free ebook on games, kind of the best practices, there's 15 best practices for games. There's some low prep and no prep games in there. A bunch of different ideas on games, as well as a free audiobook. The link will be in the description below. Just click that. Love to give it away for you for free today, just for hanging out with us. Kenny and Elle, love you guys. Thank you so much. And hit that subscribe button and catch us next week. All right. Have a good one.